The Sun is holding a special live edition of Royal Exclusive, and you can be in the audience. Much loved royal photographer Arthur Edwards.
When I went up to get my medal at the palace, I walked forward. She said, "I can't believe I'm giving you this." So she pinned the medal on me.
And TV legend Jenny Bond.
I do miss him. I mean, Harry was the most popular royal, wasn't he, a few years ago? And having watched him grow up and known him just a little bit, you know, he was a wonderful little boy.
Will be joining me, Matt Wilkinson, for an unforgettable night rich with never-heard-before stories from the past 4 decades. Find out what's really going on with Meghan and Harry and behind the walls of Buckingham Palace to what the future of the royal family is going to look like. We'll be diving into the latest royal news and giving you the inside scoop on everything you need to know. Plus, you'll have the chance to ask our expert panel your burning questions. This is your opportunity to get the answers. Don't miss it.
They have to look at the history of the royal family. You know, if you think about, the Annals Horribilis, they took on board the fact that you've got to get the best people around you and you've got to accept some tough advice. And if you haven't got a team, you haven't got a central person who's sense-checking you, you're going to make the same mistakes all over again. It's a definition of sort of, a lunacy, really. So I think that the first thing, robust team, and actually turning to that team and actually recognising we've made mistakes. And they've got to find themselves a critical friend that is actually going to, make some tough decisions on their behalf. They've got to step out of that bubble. They've got to step out of that deep ghetto they're in and recognise that everything they've done today has got to be torn up and they're going to start again. Look, the good news is for anybody who's hit the downturn, the great audience out there, have got short-term memory loss and long-term amnesia. It seems to be they're focusing on the next disaster. So you can rebuild yourself with authenticity. Focus on the things that really matter. The Invictus Games is a fantastic and a real thing that Harry's put it into. I mean, create some sort of distance between two and then starting gradually to look at the various circles of sort of people, influencers, close and close to royal family, who can do it. And somehow he's got to make peace with his brother.
Well, that's the key element, isn't it? I mean, William's going to be king one day.
That's going to take a long journey. You're not going to do that straight away. You've got to sort of prove, you've got to find that sort of level. And I think that there are indications that they recognise that they're in a last chance saloon. This article in Hollywood Reporter is very, very damaging, and it's filtered around the world. But it's a very slow process. But they cannot carry on doing the same things. What's happened to whatever this new jam brand that she's bringing out. I mean, how ridiculous is that? What does she want to be? The next sort of Martha Stewart? I think that, you see desperation slipping in now, and that should be an indication to say, let's start again and learn, indeed, from the royal family post-Diana. How they brought in some of the best people. Paddy Harverson, remarkable person who shape-shifted the whole comms business. Bring people in who know their stuff and build a team out of that, rather than getting yes people to do what you want, backed up by some Rottweiler or a lawyer who's going to send out letters to every last person. It's the way they're doing about it is akin to sort of trying to brand snow in a hailstorm.
It does feel like there have been movements in the right direction, I think. And you said patience there. That's such a good way of putting it as well, because I think that they seem to be really results-driven in that first year or two. I kind of sort of conflate it with, when you go through a breakup and you're trying to prove to your ex that you're fine. They got to the US and they wanted to say, hey, we can do this on our own. And I think this year, really since earlier in the year when Harry flew over to see his dad, when he heard he had cancer, from the things that Harry said, from the fact that his book is being released in paperback, I think it's next month, and he's not adding anything to it, things like that. I think there's signs that perhaps they're learning these lessons, perhaps, and that's their plan moving forward, is to sort of now stay the course and look toward reconciliation and a bit more peace.
Well, yeah, their plan, as we understand it, is that they're not going to say any more. They're not going to criticise the royal family anymore. They're not going to talk about William and the King, and because that was hugely damaging to their brand, because they come across as this moaning couple. As you pointed out earlier, that they've got this wonderful life out there. Stop moaning. They're trying not to moan. They're just trying to look positive. I think it's look to the future and look at all the positives and look at all the great work that they've achieved over the year with their trip to Colombia and Invictus Games coming out and stuff like that. So they're trying to get rid of this, we're this angry couple shouting insults and we're moaning, to being a more respectful couple, talking about positivity and positive plans for the future.
And they seem really good at it. When they're out, you just mentioned Colombia, you see them, and Harry at the Invictus Games, they're actually very good when they're deployed effectively. You know, it's just been that there's been a lot of directions they've gone in the last few years that are quite negative. But when they're focusing on things they care about, I think they can do a lot of good.
The issue is, I think I'm saying something radical here. I think if you think people still love Harry, they still like him, that's the problem.
Yep.
The problem is they don't like the woman he loves.
I don't think that's radical. I don't think that's controversial. I think I speak to people and it's very much the same. Harry is still Diana's son. You know, as I say, you talked about the walking behind the coffin. You know, mothers still remember, I'm sure, you know, we all still remember the funeral where he walked behind Diana's coffin, that heartbroken little boy. We still kind of care for him, but we'd never really got to know Meghan. I mean, how long was she here for?
So they dated, I think it was 18 months from when we found out about her relationship with Harry to them getting married, and then she was in the royal family for less than 2 years. So as you say, Harry is so loved here. He was Britain's favourite son. He was their cheeky son. So popular. And it's only really been a few years, it feels like a lot longer, but it's only really been a few years since he left. But I think people still hold that great affection for him, but they never really knew her. They didn't even know her as a royal, really. It was such a short period.
There was a lot of outpouring of love for her, because they felt he found someone fairly late in life, in terms of how royals, you know, sort of get married off. So I think, you know, it was in her hands to develop that. But of course, when you come from Hollywood, you come from the star system, when you come from, you know, making sure that you're absolutely on the red carpet for X, Y, and Z, make sure you've actually got your table in restaurants, you're actually seen and thereabouts. You know, they were not the premier act. And actually, in some ways, where spare was turned out of as, oh, poor me, I was a spare, you know, I was, you know, bullied by my brother, all this sort of this nonsense. Actually, being a spare in some ways was a huge advantage for him. And I think with the, you know, the diagnosis about the illness of the king, you've got, you know, the sort of treatment that Kate was going through. Actually, the royal family needed Harry. It slimmed down. And I think that's became a glaring, you know, a missing cog in this very important royal machine. I think that reflected back to him. He must have been sitting there thinking, well, God, if I hadn't done all this, you know, I'd be centre stage.
It's interesting you raised that about the outpouring of love earlier for Meghan, because I was on the Australian tour with Harry and Meghan. You cannot imagine a more rock star welcome for anyone short of the Queen, the late Queen. It was the love that was there for her, particularly because she announced that she was pregnant while she was there. I think it was the next day or even later, that first day. The outpouring of love, the crowds that were there, and of all ages. It was unbelievable, the buzz around them for that entire trip. She was very loved in that period, but again, it was just such a short period that people didn't really get the chance to hold that long-term affection that may see them bounce back